All right, we are live again. Good evening, everybody, with another episode of Release to Quacken. We're going to talk about how Week 20 training went for us on the Galloway plan, what's coming up for Week 21, kind of go around the horn, and also be joined by our special guest today, Andrea. So I'll introduce everybody else that's here for the ones who are listening on audio. Tonight we have Kevin joining us. How you doing, Kevin?
Doing good. How are you?
Not too bad. We got Mr. Lonnie G.
Hello, everybody.
And we got Jody down in Cincinnati. How's Jody?
Hey, everybody.
And we have another visitor from the Great White North, where it snows 24/7, 365 days a year. We have Andrea. How are you, Andrea?
I'm good, thanks. No snow yet.
Not yet.
So they had snow in Kentucky. My parents had 1.5 inches. That's kind of crazy.
I had snow. I was running last weekend with surfers and sand, and this weekend was snow. It was very disturbing.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
We had flurries, but nothing
degrees.
sticking.
How about you, Lonnie? Any snow?
No snow whatsoever, but it did get down to the 20s. It was 22 this morning. Yeah.
Because it went pretty close to you, I think. Not too far off.
We had some frost on the ground. It did snow in Fayetteville, which is about 3 hours from here.
Mhm.
So they had to blow off the field for the LSU game.
Wow.
So
I saw one stadium over the weekend where they had some frost in the stadium, so they decided to throw a hose on it, and it all turned to ice. Not sure who thought that was a good idea, but it did not play out well for them.
Yeah. That groundskeeper probably was like, that's not what I intended.
So,
Or maybe it was.
Or maybe it was.
So Week 20, how'd it go for everybody? What do we have on the schedule? Jody, I know you got that schedule around, so what do we have?
You know me. I've got the schedule. So week 20, we had our normal, regular maintenance runs twice a week, and then a 6-mile run over the weekend.
All right. So how'd they go for you?
For me in particular?
Yes.
It was a great 6-mile run. It was snowing. The actual snow was like pelting me in the eyes. I should have worn a visor or some sort of hat like that. I just didn't think about it. So yeah, it was a little cold, but I'm not cold. I much prefer cold when I run than hot. So I thought it was nice. And then the only thing I did different this weekend is I typically run Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. So my Monday I was on a red eye coming from California. So instead of running it, I walked LAX airport for three miles. It was 11 p.m. their time, so 11, 12, 1, 2 o'clock Eastern time. So that's how I did my 3 miles. It was technically Monday Eastern time, so that's how I did those. So that was a little different, I guess. That was my big change this week. So,
what about you, Lonnie? How'd your week go?
Week went well. Ran on a Monday, and then I kind of took a couple of days off. And then picked it up on Thursday. So I did my 2:45s, and the 6-miler Saturday went pretty good. No issues whatsoever. So kind of pushed the speed a little bit. I was on a treadmill the whole time because it was cold outside, and I don't like cold. So, but yeah, it went well.
Kevin, did you get your runs in? I know you've been having some busy weeks at work and things going on. So
yeah, work has been tough. But so last Sunday I did a 6.5. Then I did Monday and Tuesday. So trying to get some back-to-back runs in without jumping the miles up, because the most I've done is 13, and that was back in September. So I haven't done anything over 10. So I did 6.5 on Sunday, and then I did 2 45-minute runs Monday and Tuesday. And then on Thursday, I did an 8.5-mile run. I'd planned on doing the 20-mile run on Friday. It was raining all day, and decided to hold off another week and just see how it goes. And so I'm kind of doing a modified plan. I'm a little gun shy on trying to catch up too fast. So I'm just going to kind of build it up a little bit. I'm not going to jump into the 20 after doing anything crazy, because the last thing I want is because I've got some plantar fasciitis kind of acting up. I don't want that to set me back big time. So I'm kind of running that fine line between not injuring myself and trying to drink 15 emergencies a day, trying to stay healthy with everybody around being sick. So
get that. So I'm on a still slightly modified plan for a while, trying to catch up like you, Kevin. I didn't get anything in on Monday. Tuesday, I got my 45 in. Normally, I would go Thursday for the next one, but knowing I was trying to do a back-to-back this weekend, I skipped Thursday's run. Did a 4-mile treadmill walk, which I think is equivalent to about 13 miles in real miles on Friday. It was miserably boring. And then yesterday morning, I took off for my 13 miles and got that in. So it's my first back-to-back run I've done on this dopey training cycle. So
Wow, 13. That's the most you've done in a long time,
that's
right?
the most I've done since April.
Wow.
At the Flying Pig. So
that's impressive.
We're getting there, slow and steady.
Oh.
But I thought, though, this was going to be where I capped out come end of December. So the fact that I'm here already, I'm pretty pleased with. I'm under pace for where I need to be. So maybe if I keep slow and ramping this up, I can get up to 18, 19 miles by the time we come around. So
that's impressive. Good job.
But we'll see. All right, Andrea, you're just coming back from Wine and Dine, so I'm sure you got some tired legs from running 22 some miles over that plus park time. And you're on a slightly different plan than everybody else. So what did you have going on?
So I've been on a modified version of the Higdon plan. I came off of about 4 weeks of injury, ran a marathon, then took 2 more weeks off for injury. So I've only been training for about 5 weeks now. So I took off Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but I walked around 7 miles according to Fitbit in Magic Kingdom and Epcot on Monday. So I feel like that counted for something.
It counts.
I did 5K on I did 5K on Wednesday, which went well. And then I did back-to-back weekends of I did 10K on Friday and then 24 kilometers on Saturday. So I guess that's 15 miles.
Mm-hmm.
So that went pretty well. And yeah, it was a good week of training.
That's a lot after doing Wine and Dine.
Yeah,
right.
It is. That's impressive.
I kind of didn't take Wine and Dine as a race. I took it as it was a training weekend. It was my first 3 days in a row running since Princess. So 3 days in a row. And I took all the races really easily, especially the half marathon, because the weather was it was not what I'm used to anymore. So I took everything easily. So it was easy enough to bounce back from it.
Yeah, let's talk about that half marathon just a little bit. I heard it was quite hot, humid, and kind of nasty. What was your experience? Because I've heard different reports where some people got rained on and some people didn't. So how was your experience?
So I got rained on in the start and the corrals. I was in Corral D, and it was funny because then they were showing people who were up at the front, and it was pouring rain where they were, but it was just drizzling in Corral D. And then it started raining off and on, and then it got super humid. My bib was falling apart because it got so wet, and I was picking up safety pins from the ground so I wouldn't fall off. And then it was really hot. It was really humid all the way through. I was not doing well with the heat. I just kind of wanted to get it done. And everything was damp too. My feet were wet. So not the best weather.
Yeah, that's never fun. It was like that last year for Wine and Dine. I can't remember what day. Maybe it was the 5K.
The 5K poured.
The 5K was pouring rain, and then it was so bad. I think that's the day that it was so bad that we never went to a park ever. We just we took the bus to Animal Kingdom, and we were like, this is just not going to happen. And we got back on the bus, and I think we just did park or some resort hopping on the monorail loop. But I don't know what it is about Wine and Dine race weekend, but
yeah, because the 10K last year was cold and wet too. Because I remember I have a costume that had a feather on the hat, and my feather was also drooping over, and I was soaked. I feel like Wine and Dine's cursed for rain because I didn't run it, but the years of Splash and Dash, and when they shortened the course, those are kind of legendary in Run Disney.
Yeah,
I was at the boardwalk for that weekend. I was down there. We walked the 5K as a family, but I went down to cheer the 10K and a half. And I was down at the boardwalk around 5 for the half. Boardwalk was fairly dry. It's light drizzle for probably 10 to 15 minutes, and then it quit, but it's enough that just soaked the boardwalk that people were slipping and sliding coming through. It was slick.
That does get really
We
slick.
didn't have the pour down rain like they did to crowds. I saw people just looked like they were soaked coming through, and we never had that at the boardwalk.
It's crazy. It's so close.
Yeah. But all you need
Right.
is a good heavy fog at the boardwalk, and it gets slippery. Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, you
Make
really don't even need the rain. Yeah, it's just
Even
crazy.
somebody's coffee could make it too.
You're right.
Yeah.
So, Andrea, I know we're here to talk about Marathon Weekend, but I just want to quickly touch on Wine and Dine Race Weekend because I know you were there, and it was. So, what was your opinion? Because it's a hot topic. What's your opinion on the virtual queue for the expo?
So it worked out well for me because I got group 2. So I was pretty much ahead of the game, like got in early. The only issue I really had was like when I saw my expected time that I was going to be called, it was putting me around 9:30. The buses don't start running though from the resorts until 9:30.
Oh,
So I ended up taking an Uber over there, which worked out fine. I got there when I was still in the Uber, just pulling into ESPN. That's when my group was called, or the first 5 groups are called at the same time. And then had to go into the lineup and got in pretty quickly. All the merchandise that I wanted was available. All the sizes were available. The one thing I found that I didn't like though, because normally I go to their expo kind of mid-afternoon and it's not as busy. So I found that the bib pickup, because people were just there waiting around for their groups to be called. So there was a lot more people at the big bib pickup. I had to stand in line to get into the building, stand in longer lines to pick up my bibs. And then the vendor expo was a lot busier than what I normally experience.
yeah. I heard the woman who runs the Fuzzy Fizzies, is that the name of it? Pam. She said something like she did more business in the first 2 hours at Wine and Dine this year than she did the first day last year. So
Wow.
I may have that slightly wrong, but it was something like the first 2 hours were so incredibly busy that she did so much more business because of the expo and people going to the vendors first. Where I think a lot of times in the past, people spent time in line for the Run Disney merch and not maybe in line for the expo. So
we also took it. I'm sorry, Jody.
No, I just was clarifying my words. I said the wrong word. I meant in line for the vendors, not the expo.
So we also took an Uber over to there in the morning. Did your Uber have trouble finding a place to drop you off? Did they go around road closed sign?
No,
I don't know if we just came in a wrong angle or something, but our Uber driver had struggled to get us dropped off where we needed to.
No, we were pretty good. I mean, the signs were not great by any means. So he almost took a wrong turn, but we gotten fine. It worked out okay.
I wonder if that, number one, I'm glad you had a good experience, Andrea, because some of the things I've heard about the expo experience now is that more stuff was available later down the line, right? And I think Run Disney is trying to do things to make it more convenient for people, or so that everybody has a kind of a little equal opportunity to get stuff. But I am glad that it forced people to kind of go into some of the vendors and the third party sellers, but we'll see how that works for Marathon Weekend. I think now that people are starting to catch on, they'll say, okay, you know what, I'm going to go at my time, right? Yeah, I'm not going to go early and hopefully slide in. So we'll see how that works. But I'm glad you had a great experience there. I'm glad you're trying something.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say about it is that it made me because I didn't know what time my group was going to get called. I ended up changing all of my plans that I had made months ago for that day, because I was going to go Hollywood Studios and do Genie Plus and Lightning Lane for Rise of Resistance. And I had an Oga's reservation. And because I didn't know what any of my times would be like, I canceled all of that and moved it to a different day. But it's kind of like, it still worked out fine. But now we know that's most likely coming for Marathon Weekend too. It's just kind of easier to plan ahead.
Just kind of make Expo like an open day of relaxation and just kind of play it by ear without having defined plans for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thanks guys for being the guinea pigs. We appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit, Andrea, about your Run Disney history. How many dopies have you done? How many races? Kind of what's your background here?
So I did my first dopey in 2018, which was my first Run Disney event. And it was first time I'd been to Disney World in about probably 20 years. It was going to be my one and done.
You can see how that worked out.
They got you.
Yeah, they kind of got me. And then came back that same year for Star Wars. And then became an annual pass holder on that trip. went back in November for Wine and Dine. Bought DVC on that trip. So things escalated pretty quickly. In 2019, I did all the races at Disney World, and then I did Disneyland Paris as well that year.
Oh, nice.
And then in January 2020 for Dopey. And so I've done 3 Dopies now. It would have been 4, except I canceled 2022. Done 3 Wine and Dines, 2 Princess, 2 Star Wars, 1 Disneyland Paris. So I think this past weekend was my 12th Run Disney weekend.
Wow.
Wait, so was this your first Run Disney back since COVID, or did you?
No, I did Wine and Dine because I did Wine and Dine last year because I had booked my DVC room 11 months out, thinking, well, okay, if it comes back, it comes back. If it's not, I'll go for it. I'll just go anyways. And then when it got announced it was happening, I'm like, okay. So I did Wine and Dine last year, and then skipped Marathon Weekend because Omicron and crossing the border and COVID testing and everything involved with that. It was just like, it was too much. Did Princess though in February. So this is my 3rd one back since the pandemic.
Oh, that's awesome. And how did it feel this year Wine and Dine compared to last year Wine and Dine? Because that was the first Run Disney race back. So that was my husband's very first Run Disney race last year. And so it was his first experience ever, but how did you think that this year's Run Disney Wine and Dine compared to last year's?
It definitely felt like it was back to normal now. Like last year I think we were just all excited to be there again. But I mean, there was like the character stops were different. There was no characters at the start line. So that was all back now. And they had the marching bands out. So it definitely felt more back to normal. And it even just being able to interact with people more, like with the lizard group, being able to hang out with people. Because again, for me, like going back to Canada, I had a COVID test before I came back. So the level of paranoia was pretty high. So I was kind of sticking to myself those races. But now I was just like hanging out with everybody. So it felt more normal. And it was just nice to be back to it.
So what's your favorite Run Disney event? You've done pretty much all of the weekends at some point. What's your favorite event?
It's always a toss-up between Marathon Weekend and Wine and Dine. Like I love Wine and Dine because I like going when the festivals are on at Epcot. It's a little bit more low pressure because there's no marathon at the end of the weekend. But Marathon Weekends is special. There's so many people, just so many friends, and being able to hang out, like lots of events. And that marathon is it's like no other marathon. So it's just a special weekend.
Now you have a lot of experience with marathons. You've done how many?
7 now.
And how many world majors?
3 world majors.
Nice.
That's amazing. So you've done Chicago and Berlin?
New York was my first one in 2017, Chicago in 2018, then Berlin this past year.
Wow. That's amazing.
Awesome.
That's really cool.
Did you get a special medal or with stars or something? Isn't there something special with all the world?
Yeah, the 6-star medal, which I'm working towards. Now my 3 that I have left, London, Tokyo, and Boston, are going to be the more difficult ones to get into. I'm not going to be ever fast enough to qualify for Boston. So that one's going to be that's going to be hard. But now there's talk too that Sydney Marathon is going to be joining the majors as well. So by the time I get to finishing it, maybe it might be 7 stars.
Wow.
Nice.
That's
awesome.
really cool.
That's really cool.
So what about these Run Disney events, going back to that, what makes you keep going back every year? So why do you fly south and do this kind of thing?
I think it started just because they're fun, and I like to run around in costumes. They're very low pressure. I mean, the time limits they're very generous, which is nice. You don't have to I can ride a roller coaster during a marathon. You can't do that anywhere else. So that's kind of where it started. But I think in my Dopey 2019 is when I started just getting more involved with the Be Our Guest Lizards and hanging out with making Run Disney friends. And now that's kind of more the draw than anything else, because I get to go hang out with my friends from the internet. And it's fun because even though I don't see them for like months at a time, or in the case of this past year, it's been like I haven't seen people for 2 years. You just kind of pick up again where you left off. It's because you know what's going on in their lives from them posting in the Facebook groups. And that's pretty amazing.
I know that I've never met Andrea until last weekend, and I was actually walking to the Boardwalk Deli, and I hear Jeff, and it's like there's nobody else on the boardwalk, so it had to be me. So I turned around. I knew it wasn't my family, but there's Andrea coming up behind me.
You know, the funny thing about that is I did not realize until today that we hadn't met in person before I said hello to you on the boardwalk. So that's kind of just how real the internet friends are. It doesn't click in that you don't know this person in real life.
Right.
Yeah. It's the magic of Disney. Usually we try to avoid people on the internet, but now, we look for them.
Disney makes it safe.
Disney makes this, it's just we're in Disney.
So Andrea, you said one of my favorite words, not because I'm good at it, but because I thoroughly admire everyone else who excels in this area. But you said the word costume. And I know from looking at all your posts that you are incredibly talented and creative in this area. So let's talk a little bit about costumes.
Yeah, I love a costume. That's my main.
And I love that.
It's kind of one of my main draws for Run Disney. I've done all of my Run Disney races in costume, with the exception of the marathon in 2020. I wear a lizard shirt now for the marathon, but it's a big draw to me. I love a group costume. Planning costumes far enough in advance. Yeah, I got a lot of work to do before marathon weekend, but.
I'm working on my very first costume. Well, that's not true. Tim and I we were Mickey and Minnie for the 5K for Wine and Dine last year, but that was pretty simple, like a polka dot sparkle skirt and white gloves. That was pretty simple. But I'm working on my princess costume. My daughter and I are running princess. So I'm kind of going, like, I actually have a friend coming over who can thread a needle because I can't even do that. So she's going to help me with the whole part of it. So that's going to be my first attempt at, a different big costume. But tell me about some of your favorites over the years, what you've done and what's worked and things that you may not do again.
So probably my craziest costume, and this was as a group that was organized through the Lizards, was a Porg for Star Wars weekend in 2019. So that included wearing a long sleeve hoodie that I covered in fake fur and giant styrofoam eyes. So that's great running attire for April in Florida. So it was so much fun though, but most of the time we would run with our hoods down, but as soon as we saw the photo pass, you pull the hood back up so that you can keep going with it.
Those pictures were epic. I've seen those pictures. They're really great.
Yeah.
I just saw Rhonda commented here. So in marathon for the 5K in 2020, I organized a group to be Bippity Boppity Boutique Princesses. So we were all dressed up as princesses, covered in glitter. I made everyone the sashes that said Bippity Boppity Boutique. Scott Nyman was kind of dad. So he had a shirt on that said Bippity Boppity Broke on it. So he ran with us. He was obviously broke because he had 15 people go to the Bippity Boppity Boutique. So that was a lot of fun. And this past weekend, I did a smaller group costume of Alice in Wonderland characters. So I was the White Rabbit. We had Alice and then Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and that was a lot of fun.
That is awesome. Now, so this past weekend was Coco, Raya, and Soul. Did you match any costumes with the themes, or did you just do what you wanted to do?
I just did what I wanted to do. Sometimes I have themes kind of speak to me, and I'm like, I'll figure something out. I was struggling with the themes for this one, and it was kind of amazing to see, though, how people pulled off the themes, especially for Raya, because I don't feel like a lot of people, myself included, are that familiar with that movie. But some of the costumes I saw were just amazing, especially like people who did the dragon. So I sometimes I start with the theme, like Princess. I did a lot around the themes, but this one I was just like, let's just do what I want to do.
So do you have your costumes lined up for January? Do you have your plan in place already? Any secrets that you're going to let spill today?
Well, that's kind of the only probably upside of me canceling marathon weekends so late in the game last year was that my costumes were about 75% the way done. So they are going to be finished up for this marathon weekend. I'm doing a theme around classic Disney attractions. So for the 5K, I'm doing Haunted. I'm not going to be too specific, but for 5K, I'm themed around Haunted Mansion. 10K is Small World. Half marathon is spinning teacups. And the marathon, last year I made a tiki room skirt, but it's going to be replaced by something a little bit more on theme, so more 90s theme print.
Very fun.
Good deal.
Any other questions we have for Andrea before we move on to talking about what's coming up for week 21? All right, Jody, time to pull out your schedule again. What is on our calendar for week 21?
All right. So those of us on the Galloway plan, although Andrea, I'll be curious what your plan says since you're doing a different running training plan. We have our normal 45-minute runs and then a 7 miles with the Magic Mile is our weekend. So this is one of the last shorter runs. Well, no, not one of the last, but this is a nice shorter one before Thanksgiving weekend, which is kind of a big one. So, so Andrea, what do you have on your calendar?
So I'm working. This is going to be my first week of 5 runs. So it's going to be interesting. We'll see how it goes. So I'm doing 5K tomorrow, 8K Tuesday, 4K on Wednesday. Thursday's day off, 10K on Friday, and then 26K, which I think that's 60 miles on Saturday.
Wow.
That's a lot of running.
That's a lot of running.
Am I the only one that's trying to figure out her miles and kilometers by figuring out 5Ks or 3 miles and then doing the math to figure out what these actual conversions are?
Yeah.
I work in the opposite direction, so I know 8K is 5 miles. I know that.
Yeah,
I'm thinking.
I'm calculating.
So she's 5K.
5K is 3. So.
Right.
Well,
So,
best of luck. It sounds like a big week for you. So good luck with all that. I'm sure you'll be great, especially after all that time on the feet this past weekend well, not this past, but the weekend before at Walt Disney World and the races and all that walking around the parks.
Thank you.
I'm sure you'll be
one
great.
last question I have for everybody before we hop off of here. I'm seeing a lot of people posting online now because we're starting to get in some cooler temps. We got snow across the Midwest. We got cooler temps in Ohio. How is everybody adjusting to start to run into cold weather as we come through? Any tips that you have from your experience, your history, or what do you do to make that a little easier transition?
I'm a layers girl because I start off cold for the first mile or so, and then I start to get really hot really quick. So the more things I can take off and tie around my waist. So if there's a jacket at the beginning, but probably by mile 2, I'm notorious for gloves for the first mile, and then I tuck them into each other and hold them like in the palm of my hands because I get way too hot. I can't do a full hat because that you hold a lot of heat in your head. So I can do the ear type muff type things, just the band that goes around your ear, but a full hat, it's got to be really darn cold for me to wear a full hat. So I'm just layers, and luckily my feet don't get too bad. So I don't know, maybe it's just luck of the draw, but I'm layer. So it works for me.
Lonnie, do you move back outside now that it's a little cooler than it was? Get out of the garage?
Nah, I'm a treadmill guy. So when it gets cold, I have a heater. I put it on. I put it in front of the treadmill. I run. That's why, Andrea mentioned 2018 Dopey. It was freezing for that one. That was the Arctic Blast Dopey. I was miserable the whole time. Maybe I should be running outside. This is my key to it. But nah, no. I'm the wrong person to ask. I'm going to say buy a treadmill.
Kevin, do you enjoy running out in the cold?
I don't really like the cold, but it's much better for me than the heat. I tolerate the cold a lot better. It's whenever things start falling from the sky, that's when it gets a little tricky. I can't stand for my feet to get wet, so running in the rain for a short distance is okay. But once it gets over 8 or 9 miles, wet feet are no good. So, but yeah, I'll usually start like with, a hat or something at first, and then I've got some earmuffs and even got, a thing for my face that like Velcros to the back. But sometimes I'll do base layers, but only if it's really, really cold. I try to stay in shorts even when it's real cold. It's just, get too warm, but it just kind of varies. This year, I think it dropped from 70 to 20 in one day. So it's kind of hard to get used to that. The same way whenever it goes from cold to really hot. So.
Right. What about you, Andrea? I see you running out. As long as our roads and sidewalks are fairly clear, you're outside and everything, aren't you?
Pretty much. Like I will run outside till like it's minus 20 degrees Celsius. I think it's -4 Fahrenheit. Because I hate the treadmill. So I do the same with layers. Make sure I have good gloves. I feel that makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple years ago, I got some Gore-Tex running shoes, which are great for keeping my feet dry. And they also have extra tread on them. So I feel like I have a little bit more grip when it's a little bit slippery. And then wool socks.
Oh, good.
Do you have yak tracks?
I can't run in the yak tracks. I have a lot of issues with my feet, and I feel like they just hurt my feet too much. And once I accidentally stepped on a dog with them on, and I felt horrible. So the Brooks, because the ones I have are the Brooks GTX Ghost shoes, and the treads they're like my winter boots. Essentially, the treads are the same. So I find like they make a huge difference if it's slippery out.
Yeah.
I have a pair of yak tracks, and they are great when everything is thoroughly snow covered or.
Oh, Jeff, you just froze.
Bye, Jeff.
You slip and slide. So I have trouble with that. But, all right. I know one last thing I got to mention before we hop off of here is our shirt orders for the half marathon that's coming up here in January. Those are due by Wednesday. So if anybody wants to still get out there and order a shirt, the link's at the top of the group that we have there. So just go ahead and fill that out, and we'll make sure we get it to you in plenty of time for the race. Does anybody else have anything before we hop off?
Hey, I just want to thank Andrea for taking time out of her evening to join us and share your experiences. I was glad to hear your perspective on a lot of things, and looking forward to seeing you at Dopey this year.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Andrea.
Appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun. So, all right, on behalf of the rest of the Ducks that we have here and the ones who could not make it tonight, we appreciate you listening and following along. Again, thank you, Andrea. And everybody remember that forward is a pace. Have a good night, everybody.
See
Bye,
ya.
everybody.
Bye. Thank you.